So on your right, you can see Leonardo, drawn by me when I was 9 years old. On the left, you can see Leonardo when I was around 14 years old. So this is a difference around 5 years, but already we see kind of a better proportions and everything. But still, not the best artist, right? Yeah, I was the best in my class. I was drawing all the time in the notebooks, in just old papers, whatever I can find some empty space. I was drawing. This was some of my scribbles, and most of those are, you see, those I am inspired by Mortal Kombat 3. When I was, let's say, again 13, this is one of the things that I've done, and it's one of the good things. One of the things that I was trying very hard to do. In this video I will try to explain my art path through the years, how I developed as an artist and how I became what I am now, how I became a tutor, my path, how I went into the 3D and everything. I will try to explain in this video, so stay tuned. This was a cover for a comics that I wanted to do. So I was very much into comics back in the days, and I was trying to do some comicses. I couldn't, but I was making covers at least. This is also interesting drawing. I think I was 12 or 13 when I drew this, and this was the cover, the top of one of my notebooks for drawing. I was drawing inside this notebook, and this, for me, was the pinnacle of my art back then. It was the best thing that I have ever drawn, stuff like this. Now when I see it, it's like, you know. But back in the days, it was amazing. Also, you can see this Conan the Barbarian, around probably 12 years old, 13 years old. Yeah, a lot of proportional issues, but probably I haven't watched anything. I didn't work from reference, which is the problem. Later, I was doing this, for example, also without proper references, but still at some point I probably picked up some anatomy skills from drawing from references. When I was around 14, I was in 7th and 8th grade. I was in a drawing school, and then I went away from it because I thought I was the best there. So I went into a normal school, not normal but economics school. So I finished economics for a high school education, and in the economics school what happened is I wasn't having so much good practice. Well, good practice, I mean that you are drawing from some reference, from some other artist's work, but I had some. Let me show you. This was when I was 16 years old, and I drew 16 and a half, and I drew this from Iron Maiden cover, obviously, Fear of the Dark. And it was cool because I was able to draw for a long time. I was trying hard, and I did something which is obviously kind of interesting. Also, my best progress back then, anatomy-wise, came when I started to draw bodybuilders from bodybuilder magazines or newspapers, and this was one of the tries. I was drawing them very well with pen, not pencil, and this was one of the drawings, but it's not finished. I had some finished ones, but I couldn't find them. They were even better than this one. So this was my kind of lessons to anatomy without actual anatomy books, just from bodybuilders. And I think it's a very cool thing to do. I mean, to learn from bodybuilders, because their muscles are so visible and you can easily trace them, their beginnings, where they end, and how they change with different poses. It's very, very nice. So this probably is around my 20s, I think, because already you can see it's a little bit more nicer, probably we can say. This is also interesting. This is about probably 18, 19 years old. This is from the game Tsar, which is one of the first full-blown Bulgarian AAA titles. It's an RPG game, something like Age of Empires, but in some cases it's better. So yeah, this was my level until I finished high school. This is one of the photos that we took around 18 years old when we finished high school with some of my classmates. This is me, the guy with the hair. No, I had hair back then. Then I went into the mandatory military service. I was working between high school graduation and between entering university. I was working in some computer clubs. and I was developing my HTML skills and CSS, by the way, and I was trying to make some websites. But then I entered university. In the university, they made us do some projects, and this project you have to decide whether you want to do it with your hands, with styrofoam or whatever, or you can do it in 3D in a computer. So I decided I will do it in the computer. This is 2004, so probably I was around 23 years old, and I just picked up 3D Max and started to learn it probably in 2004. So let's say around 20 years ago almost, I started learning 3D Studio Max. And I was learning 3D Max, but in university we were also learning Photoshop, we were also learning SolidWorks, and I did some things with SolidWorks like this. I was pretty good with SolidWorks. Why? Because we were studying SolidWorks at school, and at some point we had to do a graduation project for SolidWorks. And I was searching for somebody to pay to do my graduation project with SolidWorks because I didn't want to deal with it. But suddenly I realized many people are searching for a guy to pay to do their graduation project with SolidWorks. And I decided to study, to learn it. And I learned SolidWorks, and I did a lot of projects for other people, and I got some money, and good money back then. Back in the days when I started learning 3D Max, I was doing this kind of things. The man is not my thing. I don't think I did the man sitting on the couch. I did all the rest, and I was super proud that I can do something in 3D. I was never thinking back then that I would do full-blown humans and so complicated ones as I'm doing now. So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. I was fascinated by the possibility to do this kind of 3D things and renders, but wasn't ever thinking that I will do humans. Actually, yes, never. Then I bought a tablet, and this, by the way, is one of my best works back in the days. I did my desk. This was my first computer, my first monitor, and my keyboard and the pen, and the mouse is a little bit big, but it's still, yeah. But yeah, the mouse is normal size, the monitor is small. This is 15 inches, I think. And those are still my speakers up to this day, by the way. It's interesting. And this is probably from 2004, so about 20 years I've used the same speakers. This is the toilet paper that all men keep on their desks, you know why. And then I bought a tablet with one of my pensions from the university. They gave me this kind of a prize. It's not a pension, it's some kind of a prize for great achievements, maybe, yeah. I got a tablet. The cheapest Wacom tablet back in the days was, I think, Wacom Voluto. And I bought one. And I started doing this and this. This was also a project for university. We had to do some kind of a biomechanical creature. And I did something like a Protoss, but with mechanical parts. It's interesting. I was doing also this was logo design. So I was doing logo design, and one of my first freelances, actually, back in the days, it was 2004 or 2005, I'm not sure. I think 2004. And this was for this company, Skycom. It was a small company selling computers, I think, and they paid me around 70 euro for this logo that I did for them. The actual final logo is not here, it's something like this first ones, but it doesn't matter. So then I decided to go after university. No, in the same time that I was in the university, I was working also in different jobs. One of the jobs that I was working the most was a guard in a private school and kindergarten. So in the daytime I was with the suit and tie, and I was, you know, greeting the people and guarding. In the night, when I have night shifts, I was just closing all the doors and just wondering what I do with my life inside this private school, inside the little cabin of the guard. But what I did also was to cheat a little bit, because I got a disc for 3D Max, a compact disc, a CD for 3D Max, with 3D Max inside. And I went into the teacher's room, I got a laptop, bring it into the guard's room, install 3D Max, and work all night and study 3D Max. I was studying 3D Max from the inside tutorials of the 3D Max, which was the tutorials were making chess figures, and it was just text and few images, text and few images. I don't know if they're still there inside 3D Max, but they were inside the Max. It was the help files, and I was studying from there, and I was practicing my 3D skills. And then when the night finishes, when the morning came, I just erased 3D Max, I delete the traces of my existence in this particular laptop and return it back where it was. And this was my secret. I was learning secretly in this school. So then I find the work with the help of my friend and former schoolmate. I find the work in a little design studio in Varna, the same city where I was studying. I found a job as a designer, and I was designing menus, I was designing all kind of things, but it wasn't the best job for me. Then I had the opportunity to go to the big city, to the capital city, Sofia of Bulgaria, and I went there and I became web designer. I was web designer in a web design firm for about 3 months. And then what happens is the biggest change of my life happened. One of the guys that was working in this web design company, he quit it and started working in Gameloft as a PHP programmer. And he told me that they are searching for artists. So I decided to just test myself and see if I can do it. Many people that I've asked, they told me that probably I will not be able to do it because I'm not on that level. So what I did is I made a portfolio. Since I was a web designer, this was the portfolio that I made. And it's still online, by the way. This is a website. You can see drawings, you can see 3D stuff. I managed for like 1 or 2 weeks to gather all the stuff and put it in this kind of a form. And I sent them a mail with this site. After a couple of days, they sent me the test. The test for Gameloft to the artists back in the day was to make an Amazon warrior, a concept of a soldier, and then make a pose of the soldier and make some other things. So what I did is this. This was my test for Gameloft. And I did this Amazon warrior. My level of drawing back then wasn't that good. I mean, this is not a bad drawing, but I wanted so hard to go into Gameloft, so I went over myself. So I didn't just scribble it and draw it from my imagination. I made my former girlfriend back then pose for me, and I took pictures. Then I put them in the computer and used them as a reference to draw this. And yes, the skin is not right, it's looking very plastic, there is no variation, but still it was a good kind of a test. When I saw the test for other people who are also accepted in Gameloft because they were searching for people exactly in this time, and I was very lucky to apply, their tests were not as good. They were pretty bad ones. This was the soldier. This was one of the versions, the first version, but this was pretty boring, so I decided to do another one, and this was much better. Of course, the arm is broken, there are a little bit of issues here and there, but overall it's not ultra bad. And I did also this. I drew the gladiator, I did the design, and all those things I packed and I sent them as the test. So this was my test for Gameloft. What happened then is I waited for a couple of days and nothing, and suddenly I realized probably they will never call me, and I had to search for another job because I had to quit my web design job. Why? Because the guys, my bosses, when they discovered that I will apply to Gameloft, that I will try to go into Gameloft, they said, before you apply, you have to first quit this job here, because they were trying to intimidate me and make me stay. And I quit. Then I was without job and I was a little bit desperate and I didn't know what to expect, and I applied to some other jobs also, and they called me for an interview for another company which was some kind of design of brochures and stuff like this. Pretty boring stuff. But suddenly from Gameloft they called me and they wanted me to go to an interview. I went the same day to an interview and I got the job. I got my first salary was, I think, double the salary that I was having in the web design company, which was, I was super happy. And in 2007 the money that I got was, let me tell you, it was 600 euro a month. This was the money that I got, and I was super happy with this salary back in the days. So in Gameloft, I bumped into a lot of creative people, a lot of people who are trying to develop themselves as an artist, as 2D artist, as concept artist, and I was trying to develop myself too, so I started to draw. We were not having too much work on the job, so we were drawing just for fun. And this was one of the things that I've drawn back then. This was one of the things I'd like to do this kind of things. This also, Earthworm Jim. So my level of drawing, my drawing skills were improving. Also for the work, I drew this. This was for one of the games. It never came out, but this was the game that was supposed to be like from old times and then to new times. And yeah, my skill was not ultra good, but I was good enough for Gameloft. At some point I realized that I'm not doing... This is also one of the things I did, because Fallout was a thing back then. I think Fallout 3 just came out, I'm not sure. And I did this. This, by the way, the gun is in 3D, and then I put it in Photoshop, and I made a guy over it, drawn a guy over the gun. So it's interesting, yeah. But mostly I was doing not concepts, I was doing this kind of things, icons and UI elements, user interface elements, which I was good at because I was a web designer. Before that I was the designer, so I was good at this, but this doesn't give me pleasure. So at some point one of the games needed some guns to be done, and they realized that I know a little bit of 3D Max, so they gave me some work to do because it has to be done. And I started doing weapons, I started doing vehicles, I started doing weapons and vehicle mostly. And at some point I realized I want to be a 3D because I have fun working with 3D, I like to do it, I kinda enjoy the 3D world. So I went to the boss of Gameloft back then and asked him what I have to do to become a 3D. He asked me, do you want to be a character 3D or environment 3D? I say, I don't know, give me both tests and we'll see. And this was stupid by me because I was always drawing characters. So how could I even think of becoming an environment 3D artist? But whatever. So I tried to start the environment test, it wasn't working well. And I did the character test. So the character test was to make a cowboy in 3D Max. We were not using ZBrush exactly in this position, only 3D Max. So what I did, since I was a 2D artist, I drew a concept of this particular cowboy. This was it. And then I did the cowboy in 3D Max. So this was the cowboy in 3D Max. It was around, less than 2000 triangles, the whole thing, with the gun and the hat and even the cigar. And the textures were drawn completely by hand in Photoshop. Everything has to be done. Modeling, unwrapping, and of course texturing. And they liked it, and I became a 3D character artist. This was 3 years, so around 2010. I entered Gameloft 2007, 2010 I became a 3D character artist. Then, one of the first things that we have done is a game called 9mm, and this was one of the NPCs in this game. He's less than 1000 triangles, the whole thing. He has just a thumb and the other fingers are connected, and the face is pretty low quality, but overall with normal maps, and already we were working with ZBrush, it came out. I made also the main character for this game, this guy. Yeah, the eyes are a little bit too big and other things, but back in the days, 2010, for a mobile game, this was a pretty good character, I would say. It was not bad. The main villain also was done by me. This guy, who looks like Danny Trejo. Obviously, he was the inspiration for this guy. And as you can see, pretty good work with the folds on the clothes and everything. Why? Because I've used a lot of references. I just search for references because I wanted to do it right. When you want something done right, you have to use references. It's inevitable. References are your guy. So the low poly was 1072 triangles, a little bit than 1000 triangles, and the high poly 22 million triangles. Yeah, polygons, even more triangles probably. And this was my level of a character when I started 2010. One of my first 3D characters, we may say, is this one. I made this concept when I was a 2D artist, and then I did this 3D in 3D Max just to try my skills. And yeah, this is probably, we may say this is one of my first 3D characters, the full 3D characters. It's not the worst, and it's not, I haven't used ZBrush at all in this character, just 3D Max. Then when I was in Gameloft, I did also a couple of other projects. Like for example, there was a contest of a character for a TV commercial or something, and I did this guy, this one. He's called Onufri. Onufri is a very common Bulgarian name. It's a very cool. And I did this guy also. This guy is a sex machine, obviously, and he has mustaches and very nice looking. Yeah, from the back. And by the way, this guy, believe it or not, he won the contest, and I got some money for this, which I split with one of my friends back then. With him, we were working on this particular character, and also I will show you one of my first freelances, and I will tell you a little bit about the freelance because it's pretty interesting. Then I will tell you how I became a tutor and educator, how I started making video tutorials. So for one of my first character freelances, except for this one of course, because this was not exactly a freelance, it was a contest. There was a girl working in a Gameloft. She's now working in Axie Studio, I'm not sure, but they're doing very nice things. She's a very good artist, but she's very good with anatomy. With clothes she was not as good. So she was doing a freelance and she did this. This is the freelance up to the point that she was doing it, but they didn't like it. So she offered me to finish the character and to get all the money without any issue. So I decided to do it completely, to redo the character completely, and my final character was this one. So it was a little bit more refined, a little bit better. I did it completely from scratch, this one. And then I started working for those guys, and I made a lot of characters and stuff. So let me show you another one. So this is one of the animals I did for another company, and I will tell you a little bit more about this company because it's very interesting. I was offered a job as an animal artist or whatever. I have to do some animals for a certain game. The game was survival game. It was about to came out in the next year when they offered me, and they told me when the game came out, the sales will be this amount and you will get this amount of money, because the contract was not to get money for work, but to get money when the game came out as a percentage of the work. So for each job I did, I got a little percentage of the final money when the game came out. This is of course a scheme which you will never get money out of, but it was a nice experience and a good experience for me. So this was one of the animals I did. This was another one, just a normal. This was a very nice experience, by the way, to do a crab. Otherwise I would never probably do just a basic crab. And it was cool. They were cool, they were liking it very much because they're character artists. They had character artists who were doing the characters. They were pretty bad. And I was better than them, but they wanted me to do animals. So I said, okay. I did a turtle, I did an elephant, I did a... I think I did around 10 or 12 or 17, I'm not sure how many of those animals, spiders. And this kind of is a good exercise of animal anatomy, because I was doing all of them from references, of course. This is a tick, and this is a vulture. And there are others, but the idea here is that you have to be very careful with those things, because it's never... this game still haven't came out. Let me show you one of my drawings, by the way. This is an old one. When Hellboy gets old, and his hand is still the same size, but he's weaker and smaller. So yeah, also I did this one. This is by a concept from one of my friends. He is now an art director in Crytek, I think, which is creative assembly. So yeah, he was pretty bad artist back in the days when we began our career. He started in Gameloft with me in 2007, but he developed himself much better in the 2D, and he became a very, very good 2D artist. How I became a tutorial artist, how I started doing courses. So there was this girl from Victory 3D, Corazon Brian, I think was her name, and she contacted one of my colleagues. He was sitting right next to me, and she contacted him. She wanted him to do a course for her, to record the course, to record the character course for her. He didn't want to do it, and he offered me to do it instead. So he just gave me her contacts, and I started working with her. I did a couple of courses with her. One of the courses was for this character, which I invented myself. The concept is mine, and the character is... I developed the whole character by myself. So I did a couple of courses for her, and then this is one of the courses, by the way, from high poly to low poly to Substance Painter. Yeah, ZBrush 3D Max Substance Painter. So it's interesting. I developed some courses for Corazon Brian, for Victory 3D, and then the guy contacted me from Next to Education and wanted me to do a course for him. And I asked for a little bit more money just because I didn't want to do a course, but he gave me the money, so I did it. And this was the first course I did for Next to Education. It was this assassin girl, and I started doing courses for him. This is the second, I think. This is one of the next ones, and many of you know those courses for Next to Education. So I did them, and at some point I realized that he's making more money from those courses, that he's paying me a lot more, especially on this girl. The difference was like times and times. So yeah, the final course I did was this one, and then I decided to do a course for me. And this was my first course that I did for myself, and I was selling. And since then I did a lot of courses, like 15 maybe. This is the first one, the Absolute Beginners, just behind me. ZBrush course. Then I made a female anatomy for artists, because you know, I was searching for female anatomy course because I was working in Gameloft. I was trying to make female characters, and I was good, but I thought I could be better. So I decided to search for a course for female anatomy, and I couldn't find one, so I created one myself. Yeah, I was working a lot to create this course. I was researching, I was practicing a lot from references, from all kinds of things. It was a lot of work to do this course, but I think it was worth it. Then I did this one, and I started using Blender in this one. Then I did a couple more with ZBrush, and this one is just human anatomy. I called it Superhuman Anatomy to be a little bit more interesting, but it's a basically human anatomy course. Then I started working with Blender, and I did a Blender for Absolute Beginner course, and then a complete 3D game character in Blender course, then the Demon Hunters, Lobo, Head Anatomy and Sculpting exercise. You can find all those courses in my ArtStation page, as you can see, in the store, portfolio store. All those things are here. So yeah, this was my professional path until this point. Now I am taking care of my YouTube channels. I'm doing lives. I'm doing a lot of lives in my other channel, which is called SpeedChar Live. And in those channel you can find a lot of lives in the lives section. In the description below I will put the link to this channel, and almost every week I'm making a live there, sculpting something or talking about things. It's just more like a talk show, but with sculpting. It's pretty interesting. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this